sponsored by Terrell Hogan Law, a premier boutique litigation firm with over 50 years of experience located in Jacksonville, Florida. Today we have a special guest. Today we have a lawyer that I personally have known for almost 35 years and is considered one of the best bicycle lawyers in the state of Florida. Please welcome Chris Burns. Chris, how are you, sir?
Thank you, Alan. I appreciate it.
So I say bike lawyer. What does that mean?
Well, let me give you just a couple of numbers, Alan. In the United States, there are 50 million people who ride bicycles. About every other house has at least one bicycle. And there are, because of that, thousands and thousands of bicycle crashes and accidents where cyclists are injured or suffer because of an incident. And I realized after I'd gone to law school and became a lawyer that there really wasn't a specialist lawyer anywhere around North Florida that specialized in defending the rights of people who ride bicycles. And most people don't realize that the laws in the state of Florida include many specialized laws that apply just to cyclists. And oftentimes, judges, lawyers, even law enforcement don't realize that there are those special laws. And so I studied them, and I also was a very avid cyclist myself, so I knew what it was like to be out there riding a bike. And I decided to put those two things together that I love, riding a bike and also advocating for people in something that I love to do.
So what's unique about what you do, as you know, I do asbestos litigation, which is a specialty niche, and have been doing it for 30 plus years. But in your situation, I think everybody has witnessed at least once when they're driving down the road, our viewers, where they see a long line of bicyclists riding along the side of the road. And most drivers will say, oh, they're in the way. But isn't there a law that says actually they're not in your way, you're in their way?
Yeah, that's absolutely right, Alan. There's many people don't realize it, but cyclists have the exact same rights to be on the road as do motorists. We tend to be a very motorist-centric society, especially in Florida. The roads that have developed in Florida tend to be higher speed roads than many other places in the United States. And sort of, if you can think of a bicycle wheel, the way that many communities have developed in Florida is that there's a central downtown, and then like spokes on a bike wheel, there are these high-speed roads that come out from downtown, and they actually cause quite a danger for cyclists who have every right to be using them, as do motorists, because the speeds are great. Statistically, anytime you have an accident with a bicycle and a motorist, and it's about 45 miles an hour or greater, most of the time the cyclist dies. So these are very serious situations. And yes, the law codifies that cyclists have every right to be on the roads, but just because they have a legal right doesn't mean that motorists necessarily are paying attention or have the expectation. In fact, there have been cases that I've handled where there were cyclists who were in a school crossing zone in a defined crosswalk, and yet the motorist didn't stop because the motorist always thought people needed to wait for me.
Well, and it actually, there are so many bike accident cases, people don't realize that you actually are in charge of the bike accident litigation group at Terrell Hogan Law. Isn't that correct?
That's right, yeah. You know, Alan, in the state of Florida, 18 cyclists are involved in an accident every day of the year. So there are lots and lots of bicycle accidents. There are also, unfortunately, too many fatalities. Did you know that Florida leads the United States in fatalities? So there is a real need. And there is a need for someone who represents cyclists to not only understand the law, but also to understand what is it like to be out there. Because you're on a 20-pound bike and you're interacting with a 5,000-pound vehicle or more, and you're at a disadvantage, and there are lots of need for someone to represent the cyclists who have issues. And yeah, I'm very pleased and proud for the last 30 years to have committed my law practice to that and to be able to lead our team at Terrell Hogan when it comes to those cases.
Now, your passion is actually riding a bicycle as well, and paddleboarding?
Paddleboarding, yes. I am trying everything I can, probably less successfully than you, to act like I'm young. But yes, I'm an avid cyclist. It started when I was a little kid. I grew up in a small town in Indiana, and it was small enough that my parents, when I was about 10 years old, let me ride 4 or 5 miles from the house. And that was good because we lived in a rural area, and it was about 4 or 5 miles to downtown 20,000 person village. And I used to ride my bike when I was that old, and I found it incredibly cool to be so independent. I could leave my parents' house and be on my own, and then I've been riding ever since. I've been so blessed to have been able to go to ride in lots of different countries in Europe and all over the United States. But yes, if I'm not riding my bike and or with my family, I would love to be out in the middle of the water on a paddleboard.
Well, I know a time several years ago, I was gearing up for a big medical malpractice trial, and it was about 6:30 a.m. on a Saturday morning, and I had gotten to work. I was going over the Main Street Bridge to work, and I looked out and I saw you out on a paddleboard with a dog sitting on your paddleboard.
That's right. Yes, I've got lots of friends, human friends, who like to paddle, but there's no better buddy I have in the world than my dog Ketchum, who usually goes with me while I stand up paddleboard and sits between my legs and watches the fish, but fortunately never dives in. And he and I have gone all over Jacksonville, Florida, to be able to go in the water with each other.
So one of the things that I know that makes Terrell Hogan Law so successful, not only are they considered one of the premier boutique litigation firms in the whole state and do pretty much every type of litigation, but they're also very involved in the community. And with that said, they really encourage all their lawyers to get involved in the community and different nonprofits. You have taken your passion for bicycling and channeled that into the Emerald Trail, is that correct?
Well, first of all, Alan, you're absolutely right. That's a very important part of what you and I and others do at Terrell Hogan. And I am somewhat self-conscious to talk about my own participation when you have done so much in the community in so many different ways. But yes, through my expertise that I've developed from being a lawyer for cyclists and pedestrians, but also because of my love of those activities, I've been involved in a number of boards. Currently, I'm on a board which is responsible for building a 30-mile urban shared use path called the Emerald Trail in Jacksonville. We've just opened the Model Mile, and it'll really be transformative for downtown Jacksonville, much like the Beltway in Atlanta. And I've worked on some other committees and organizations that are trying to improve conditions for pedestrians and cyclists. One of the sad realities about the state of Florida and Jacksonville in particular is we don't have very many bike lanes. We have any number of communities or neighborhoods where there aren't even sidewalks. And we just need to improve. It would go a long way to improving our safety as walkers and bicyclists if we had our own facility, namely a bike lane or a sidewalk in which to use.
Sure, sure. Now, I don't want to let you go today without also covering, you do auto accidents and trucking accidents as well, correct?
I do, yes. Anything related to the roads, motor vehicles is a significant part of my practice. My specialty is involved with bikes, but certainly I handle other cases like that and devote my practice to it, yes.
Chris, if someone's injured, whether it's auto, trucking accident, or more importantly, the biking, which is your specialty niche throughout the state of Florida, how can that person get in contact with you?
Well, they can do a number of things. One, they can call our firm number. I've made it a point, once I get a contact, to always give people my personal cell phone. I don't mind at all that they call me, and that way they can reach me on a weekend, or it can be late at night and they can send me a text. I'm happy to receive that. I have a website. The firm has an excellent website. They can reach me through that. They probably could also find me through some various organizations that I work with, including the North Florida Bicycle Club and other organizations like that. But yes, I'd be honored to answer any questions that relate to bicycling. Actually, I get a lot of calls from people who simply have questions. Maybe they haven't been in an accident, but they ask me, hey, am I allowed to ride my e-bike on this trail? And so I'm happy to answer those kinds of questions as well.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Well, Chris, thank you for joining us
today.
Thank
you.
And if someone needs Chris's services, you can contact him at terrellhoganlaw.com or 904-632-2424. Terrell Hogan Law has been a law firm that's been in existence for 50 years, located in downtown Jacksonville, Florida. That concludes today's episode of Raising the Bar. Thank you for joining us.